What I could do, what you would normally do, is insert a new track, or you could even be cooler and insert a virtual instrument on a new track. In this case, I use Omnisphere, almost pretty much the only synthesizer I use nowadays, because I just think it's incredible, and I honestly feel like I've only scratched the surface with it, and so for me, I don't even really want to try another synth until I do that. So what I could do is that, it'll ask me if I want to create multi-track routing, whatever. But I've actually set up a track from template here, an Omnisphere startup, and what this has is just some kind of basic tweaks to it. So if I hit this, it'll load everything in exactly how I want it. I don't have to do things like normally you would have to, let's see if you go in here, it's already colored. There's actually a color difference already programmed in. Normally we go to, what would be options, build 16 channels of MIDI routing to this track and then delete 8. I have it already set up so I don't even have to do that. Other things are the default sawtooth is the saw square fat or bright, I forgot. But I have it set up to the virus saw. So that's the TI-axis virus modeled saw. You can't really see, but I have a MIDI keyboard right here in front of me. I have an M-Audio 88. It doesn't really matter what you're using. I have the 88 just so I have the full range from all the way, but you know, most of it's in the middle here anyways. So if you want to hear, this would normally sound like, but I have it set to the virus saw. So I'll play a little bit and then if I hit the virus saw, you can hear it's just a little bit brighter. It's not a huge thing, but I just have it set up how I want already. Certain changes in the outputs are already programmed in. There are, I think, still effects in here. I might change that one day just because I don't even really see the point of having these effects preloaded in. But anyways, what I'm going to do is go to the Keyscape library, select acoustic piano, acoustic, not acoustic. And I really like this patch wash. So we'll just select that. It'll take a little bit to load, but I can hear that it's not fully loaded in yet. It's loaded in some of the lower velocities, but as it loads in, it'll get some of the bigger ones. Music for Violet Tears. It's one of my favorite sort of piano parts I've written. It's relatively easy to play too, so I don't struggle with it. So anyways, what this is just the Yamaha C7, and it's running through right now. If you load any of the Keyscape patches in, it'll load them as in the sort of Keyscape user interface, but you can also just exit out of that and see what's going on under the hood. And under the hood, we've got a little bit of EQ. It's actually running through a Fender amp simulation. I don't know if it's the Twin exactly. You can turn a compressor on and off. It's got a tape slammer, and then it's sending to an aux. It's sending to this chorus plugin and then to a reverb that sounds just amazing. I won't actually keep this reverb, most likely. I'll actually set up probably a version of EOS, or I'm really a big fan of the Valhalla Shimmer plugin right now too. But basically what it's doing is the same thing as what EOS does. So back in the vocal reverb here, you can see EOS has got basically a chorus plugin built in ahead of time before it hits the reverb. And so it's almost the same type of gig going on. So anyways, we have this really huge reverb. Now, I like it just because it's beautiful. and I like it to write with, but I might not even have a piano in the final track. That's not the point. Right now, what I'm trying to figure out is what's the harmonic structure of the song going to be. And so first off, I don't even know what key this is in.
Born into a mystery, our hearts are beating.
Sounds like it's in E minor.
Hungering for significance, we're believing. Born into a mystery, our hearts are beating.
Yeah, it's in E minor. So it's almost, A minor would be all the white keys, but instead of F, we have F sharp. So that gives us the, right? So we're in a relatively easy key to play in. So I could, right now I kind of have a decision to make. Listening to these vocals, I can hear that obviously it could work well over the minor chord, E minor.
Born into a mystery.
Right, that's an easy choice. The song will probably be built around an E minor chord because it won't, in the past with some of what I've done with Miss FD's tracks, I've actually gone sort of outside of what her vocals are in to do some kind of interesting melodic stuff. So I could, for instance, kind of force this into a Phrygian or Phrygian dominant sound with that. So that would be by lowering the F sharp back to an F.
Born into a mystery, our hearts are beating.
To kind of give it more of an industrial sound, but just I could hear how badly that was clashing, so I probably can't get away with that. I could also do something, I'm a big fan of a octatonic sound, so I could maybe get away with bringing in some octatonic sound. So I'm going to just play around with that real quick.
Born into a mystery, our hearts are beating.
And then this would be the part that could clash.
We're believing. Born into a mystery, our hearts are beating.
What's interesting is that actually, even though that's a very clashy sort of scale, it clashed less than the Phrygian sound. And we do have some sort of cool chanting stuff here that we'll play around with a little bit as we go, that we might be able to get some octatonicism in there. But for now, it sounds like we're going to be stuck in the key of E minor, which is fine. I could, now this is the chorus. So what I would like is not to have the first chord of the chorus be E minor if possible, because more or less the rest of the song, I have a feeling, is going to have a lot of E minor in it. So we've got other chords, obviously, that we're going to have to play with. So if we went to, what would this be, D major, right? That might be a cool chord to give it a mixolydian feel. Beautiful.
Mystery, our hearts are beating. Hungering for significance, we're believing.
So that's one option, would be to start with a mixolydian feel on the chorus. If you don't know what these words are, I'm trying to speak. I'm assuming that if you're watching this video, you've got some idea of what's going on with music. It's probably too hard for me to slow down and actually explain everything I'm doing while I'm going, even with like the reverb and stuff. If you're not familiar, some of this might be a little over your head. And I'm sorry, I'm going to have to do some of that. You feel free to email me, message me, comment on the video. I'll explain anything. It's easier for me to explain stuff later, probably, than to explain as I'm going. But basically, I'm assuming you're familiar of why a song should be in a key. A key is a scale that all of the notes in the song fall into. So we're using E minor. That's this scale. This is the Aeolian mode, or the sixth mode of the major scale, which It's a lot of shit to say real quick, but this would be a major scale, G major. Right? Wait a second, maybe, no, it would be, there we go, that's the major scale, G major. And we're playing the sixth mode of that, the minor key version of that. So that would be, and a mode is just starting any given scale at a different point, and we're going to be in the minor key. That's also called the Aeolian mode. And I kind of come from like a jazzy background, so I think of chords from the perspective of what mode they're in, what scale I could play over that chord. A lot of people talk, I think it's more common in the pop, country, and classical music tradition to talk about chords by their number. So you could say this is the sixth chord because it's so we're in E minor, you know, right? So it's a sixth chord. This is a 5 and a 4, 5, 4, right? If you were in a major key, if you're in a minor key, obviously this would be the 1 chord. And then this is what would it be? The 7 and the 6, right? Whatever. But I'm going to kind of talk the way I'm thinking, which is I'm thinking about an Aeolian scale could go over this, or the natural minor scale. And then a mixolydian scale could work here. And what makes it mixolydian instead of major is you've got a flat seventh. So in a major, you would be able to play a major seventh here, right? This note, or more like you would play it up at the seventh, or that's not it. There we go. It's a very beautiful jazzy chord, right? But because we are in E minor, that note isn't available to us. It's flat. So that's that bluesy mixolydian note. And then you have the C major, which would be a Lydian chord. And what makes it Lydian is, I don't know if this is interesting to you guys, but instead of having the fourth here, right? This would be a fourth, add fourth. We have this mixolydian sharped fourth, right? That note is what makes it Lydian. So anyways, I'm going to be talking that way, and that might be a little bit confusing for some people, but it's how I think, and it's what I'm going to continue to do. So anyways, usually speaking in minor chord progressions, which this is what, I didn't say this, but I'm trying to figure out what chord progression I want to use for the chorus. You of course have the minor, which is the strongest, most powerful way to open up. So
Born into a mystery, our hearts are beating,
right,
beating.
But because I know that the song is going to focus on minor a lot, I want to use something else. So I'm going to use, hopefully, I hope to. I might not. I mean, plenty of songs actually are awesome when they have a very strong minor chorus. But if I can get away with like the mixolydian sounded great. With a seventh chord in a minor scale. Whoops, sorry. So.
Hungering for significance, we're believing.
Right. So that's D major to C major. I'm gonna probably not bother to tell you all the chord names as I'm going, but hoping you guys can follow what I'm doing here. I could also start on C major. This would be probably the most common other place to start in E minor than that for a chorus. So, and then you get this classic chord progression.
Hungering for significance, we're believing.
G major. So C major.
Born into a mystery,
D major.
Our hearts are beating.
E major.
Beating. Hungering
Whoops.
for significance,
What am I doing?
we're believing.
Now we're G major. Sorry. Played F major instead of E minor there, just because I wasn't looking. So we've got chords available. We also have what would be the Dorian or the 2 chord, or in minor, I don't even know what the chord number is, would be 1 up from G major. So it should be A minor should be the Dorian chord here. Oh, that's kind of cool.
Our hearts are beating, beating.
So you could do something like go from A minor to C major, so.
Born into a mystery, our hearts are beating, beating.
E minor.
Hungering for significance.
D major.
We're believing, believing.
Oh, yeah.
Born into a mystery, our hearts are beating, beating.
E minor.
Hungering for significance. We're believing, believing.
So that's an option too. So really, it seems we're kind of lucky here. We've got a bunch of starting points. I could, it would be pretty difficult to pull off a B minor right here, I think. Just because I think of it as a Phrygian chord, but the 3 chord in a major scale. It's just such a hard place to start. We could also easily start on G major, right? I mean, harmonically, we could start here. Nothing wrong with that. We could even start on the major 7th, or, right, we could, how to press this. Yeah, we could start with the 7th chord. Right, it's beautiful, but I have a sort of prejudice against major scale anything. I never write anything in a major scale. It just isn't how I write music. So I'll start anywhere but that chord. So what's interesting about going to the 2 chord in a major scale or the Locrian scale based chord at this point is, I always think of it as like the bridge chord. You know, a lot of times when you're writing a song and you want to kind of change the feeling like you're going someplace, this is the chord to do it. It retains the character of the natural minor because it doesn't have that flat second note in it like the Phrygian does. Phrygian really has like a very distinct sound, and for like this sort of melodic chorus, I don't think it would be very useful, but the Dorian can be, and I think it sounds better than starting on the Lydian chord. Born into a mystery, our hearts are beating. Born into a mystery. Right, that sounds good, you know. Could do that, but when I was playing around with it, I just heard. Born into a mystery, our hearts are beating. It's just like, emotional to it. Hungering for significance, we're believing. This will be the chord progression. I just love this. A minor, C major. Now we go to E minor. So we're going above that chord and we drop into the D major. So that, I don't know how to say it, we're moving in thirds, which is pretty common in chord progressions. So, all right, I have to go to work and I will be back, so that I might be in different clothes or something like that. All right, guys, I'm back from work, and so where I left off is I had a minor chord, a C major chord, an E minor chord, and a D major chord. So let's go to listen.
Born into a mystery, our hearts are beating, beating. Hungering for significance, we're believing, believing.
Anyways, for me, when I'm coming up with melodies and chords, and really for me, it's all about what the chord progression is and how the melody interacts with that. And, especially when I have something like this where someone's just given me an awesome vocal to work with, it's a lot easier to just sort of figure out a chord progression that, when you have to come up with a melody and a chord progression, it's like, it can be tough, but here's the melody, right? I have to find the chord progression that makes that melody have the most emotion. And that's a lot easier when you have a melody you can't change, right? There's no second guessing it. I'm not going to ask Miss FD to re-sing a note or something like that. And not that I would, because it's beautiful. And you know what? I really just kind of like my gut instinct on this one, which was just to go for, leading with a Dorian chord. That's very odd in most music, but it seems to work. So what I'm going to do real quick is just record this. I'm going to right click on the metronome and set to pre-roll before recording, and we'll say 2 measures just so I have a little moment, and I'm going to turn the metronome on and maybe turn it down because it's probably really loud, and see how this works. So
born into a mystery, our hearts are beating, hungering for significance. We're believing. Born into a mystery, our hearts are beating. Hungering.
Sorry for the nose sniffles. Definitely sick.
We're believing.
All right, I stopped a little bit early just because I had loop on and I forgot about that. So now what I'm going to do is I had this error note right there. All right, I'm going to select all of these with Control A, then hit quantize. What quantize will do is I can lock everything down. And if I set the grid to 1 like this, it'll lock everything to the exact, and I have position no length here. So you could go all the way back, all the way to, and in between if you wanted. But in this case, I just want to get the notes in. I could have drawn them in, but I do like having a little bit of the velocity that's similar to what I'm playing. That way when I'm playing other notes and I'm coming up with melodies, I'm actually able to, match the sort of sound. If you really like bang these keys and go like, it's almost a little unnatural. So yeah, we have that in now. And now when we listen to it, we have.
Born into a mystery,
I'm going to disable run metronome during playback.
Hungering for significance, we're believing.
Oh yeah, it's good.
Born into a mystery.
Does that work? I was thinking about putting some like staccato violins or something in here to just make it really epic and cinematic. So anyways, what I want to do here is kind of like what I was doing before and figure out a chord progression or something that I like. Now the guess would be that I'll be using an E minor. God damn it, I'm so sorry. My nose has just decided to start running. So my guess is it's going to be built around an E minor, but there's no reason to ever limit yourself. We'll see what happens once I start noodling.
How far back can we see in time? We've risen from the ashes of stars, riding the waves and seasons of times to worlds without end and infinite mind. How far back can we see in time?
All right. So you could get away with a lot of what I just did, but let's see if we can get sneak that Lydian or that 4 chord in.
How far back can we see in time? We've risen from the ashes of stars, riding the waves and seasons of times to worlds without end and infinite mind. How far back can we see in time? We've risen from the ashes of stars, riding the waves and seasons of times to worlds without end and infinite mind. How far back can we see in time? We've risen from the ashes of stars, riding the waves and seasons of times to worlds without end and infinite mind. How far back can we see in time? We've risen from the ashes of stars, riding the waves and seasons of times to worlds without end and
Well, let's try to sneak in that 7, that Phrygian chord.
We've risen from the ashes of stars, riding the waves and seasons of times to worlds without end and infinite mind. How far back?
Alright, so what is that chord gonna have to do? Okay, so it's a B.
We've risen from the ashes of stars.
Right, so I can sneak that in.
Riding the waves
I say sneak because that Phrygian chord's not very common in a progression like this.
How far back can we see in time? We've risen from the ashes of stars, riding the waves and seasons of times to worlds without end and
I actually really like that though. So why don't we turn this off and see if I can play it once, like halfway okay. 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
How far back can we see in time? We've risen from the ashes of stars, riding the waves and seasons of times to worlds without end and infinite mind.
All right, so I kept sharpening the third on that chord, that minor chord there. So I'm gonna just trim that back, and then this should be down. And then if I select all and quantize it, now we have what I had in mind that I wasn't able to play because I'm bad. So.
How far back can we see in time? We've risen from the ashes of stars, riding the waves and seasons.
I did something really wrong. Wait. Okay. That. What the fuck is going on here? So wait. Oh. I don't know what I was thinking. Okay, so here we go.
How far back can we see in time?
Welcome to making masterclass with Vulture Culture. Who the fuck knows what notes are?
Waves and seasons of times to worlds without end and infinite minds.
That's the chord progression I had in mind. I'm always going for emotion, you know, like that's what I want. I want it to have a certain thing. Now, what we can do is, because this is a pretty strong chord progression, we can actually fuck it up if we want by doing some voice leading. The cheap way to voice leading is very complicated, and you'd have to ask my good friend Case Ivernia how to do it properly. But one way you can do it is you can pick a note. In this case, I'm going to pick E, right? And I'm not going to let any notes fall below that. So what this has done is it's constrained all of these notes in their octave. This might not be the right voice lead exactly. We'll have to play around a little bit. But what this will kind of let you do is it creates oftentimes patterns that are kind of neat, where you can see that there's kind of like an upward step motion. There's some, twice in a row here. So let's see what we have.
How far back can we see in time? We've risen from the ashes of stars, riding the waves and seasons of times to worlds without end.
Isn't that cool?
And infinite mind.
So we're able to go from, let's drop those back down an octave. So you can really kind of hear the difference. Let's just do this real quick. Mute those. So here's without the voice leading.
How far back
just the chords.
See in time, we've risen from the ashes of stars, riding the waves and seasons of times to worlds without end and infinite mind.
Pretty cool. Let's try it with this.
How far back can we see in time? We've risen from the ashes of stars, riding the waves and seasons of times to worlds without end and infinite.
Just helps keep it a little bit more interesting. The notes kind of flow, like it feels like one kind of chord noodle instead of feeling, except for the E minor chord because it's really powerful there, but it helps it kind of like, bust out of stuff. Now, I've done this before where it sounds great on the piano, but then once we get to the point where we're actually putting in a bass line and stuff like that, you still need to like reinforce the bass line of the chords, but we'll see how that works as it goes. I don't think it's gonna work. I mean, it actually sounds pretty good. It sounds pretty harmonious. Oh, that's good though, right there. Beating, hungering for significance. We're believing. You did it again, Alex. Sounds fucking good. No, but I mean, I don't mean to be like sounding really vain, but I have done enough of this to have like a kind of a feel for what is it that tugs on heartstrings, and that's what I'm always looking for. So this doesn't tug on heartstrings though. This is to And in fact, like, especially here, once we get the extra harmony, which I didn't even know we had, I wasn't looking, we got to get something in here that's going to work. So we're going to loop this and I'm going to noodle. What's interesting is it almost sounds like she's modulated into Phrygian. Right? Doesn't that, to me? Right, so so that isn't in key with the rest of the song. That's actually in Phrygian dominant. That, I shouldn't say, and when I say not in key, I don't mean that she's singing out of key. That's usually like slander against a vocalist. What I'm saying is she's actually changed the root harmonic structure for that part, which is pretty cool, which is why the chords below were working, but not as well as they could. So instead of being in E minor like this, in E Phrygian, you would have, instead of the second, like this would be with the second. Now it's a flat second, so you get this chord really dissonant. Like that is really something unique. But I think we're in Phrygian dominant, which means I can actually sneak an E major chord in. Well, yeah, totally, no trouble. Right. What is it? Yeah. And that, but I still have access to this chord, I believe. Yeah. So what that means is, in this case, I might actually draw in some stuff just to make sure that I'm doing this somewhat correctly. So what are my average velocities here? Somewhere in that neighborhood. All right, so we'll draw in. We'll bring it down. And we'll humanize this in a second. So we'll start with the C major chord. And we'll do another one. And what I want to do, hopefully, is sneak in another chord. And is this isn't in here. So I think it has to be minor here. We'll see. Yeah. It would have to be that minor chord because you have this, what Phrygian dominant is, for anyone who doesn't know, is it's a mode of the harmonic minor scale. So an E minor scale is like that, and an E harmonic minor scale would be like that. So you have, you have like that. And then if you started the scale instead of on E, you started on B. Yeah. Like that. So you have that's the B Phrygian dominant. And then what Miss FD's done here is she has modulated in from C natural minor or Aeolian directly into Phrygian dominant. And she's sort of just, it's a very natural sounding modulation. I didn't even catch it up until this point, but it's, kind of in a lot of modern music, you just kick the door down is how I call this kind of modulation, where you just go from one minor key to another minor key, and I did this in the song Neverborn. I did this on another song with Miss FD called Wild Ride, where I wrote the verses in Phrygian and then the chorus is in Aeolian or natural minor. And there's no good reason. It's just, you just kick the door down and get in there. So anyways, the problem with too much movement in this section though is I don't want to establish Phrygian dominant too strongly here because we have to end up back at that Dorian chord, which is not a very strong chord as far as chords go. So. Hope this makes it in. I think it'll be okay. I think it's pretty good. There might be a chance I need to mess with that though. The big thing about a chorus is you got to make sure that like whatever leads into it, that you get something that like locks the listener into expectation. So when you hit that chord, it's like, whoa, you know? So there might need to be some tweaking there. All right, so in my opinion, the song is pretty much done in some sense, because what really, at the end of the day, for all my years of bullshit and all the time I've spent compressing snare drums, I have to say, it always comes down to the melody and it always comes down to the chords. And if you have great chords and you have a great melody, you have a great song. All you have to do at this point is not fuck it up. So let's see how I do with that. I think the next thing I want to get going is the drums, because as it stands, I could start working on synths, but I think that just to be able to get some drums in here might help me get some direction of what I want to do insofar as the feel of the track. Now, FD said to me, she always gives me basically complete creative control. She's incredible like that. She's like, just do your thing, you know, which is, you know, it's just awesome that she trusts me enough to really let me just do what I do. But she did say that she kind of wanted to keep it kind of synth poppy, and she even gave me some like, you know, artists that she thought might match the song. And you know, I'm gonna do my best to sort of steer in that direction. But if the song pulls me in a different direction, I'm going to just go in that other direction, because I think at the end of the day, what makes this cool is, you know, my input into it and not necessarily what she had planned.